basically what we asked you to do is write and perform responses to the programming we had in place. And you had the sung texts for a while, but you were able to join us digitally for the first read through.
I remember the first time I heard you all make sound together. Like you weren't even doing the songs yet. It was just like a little warm up or something. I was was sitting on my partner's bed, like crying because it had been so many months since I'd heard like real voices in the same space together. Like it was just the most thrilling thing that had happened to me in like months. I was on a high that entire week. So it was truly so exciting. So beyond, it took me, I'm gonna say a solid like 10-15 minutes of the call, I think, for the hairs on my arm to kind of like settle, just from like, oh my God, this is what togetherness sounds like. But then after that, I was really moved by the layers and the nuance in the pieces that are part of this concert. The way my process works is I love the idea of like being inspired by something. So the whole time I was trying to like free write, just kind of like let whatever was coming to mind get on the page. And I just remember every time I could barely like catch the end of one thought before what I was experiencing was leading me in a new direction. And like I said before, I have my own experiences with being in choirs, but I find it's rare to find that amount of I guess like change and dynamic and growth and shift in like a lot of popular vocal ensembles and choral music. And that's one thing I thought was like so riveting. Like I really never knew beat to beat, moment to moment, breath to breath, where every piece was going next. And I can't think of like a more beautiful like prompt to be tasked with like making, like to be tasked to responding to. Yeah, that's what was going through my mind. I was like, also I was thinking, oh my God, all these people could sing. Yeah, those are all the things I was thinking.
So how did you get from that into actually writing the pieces?
So yeah, with this like project in particular, I was really excited about I think the formula for me here was I wanted to find the perfect marriage of like your pieces influencing where I am as an artist right now, and then like vice versa, allowing where I am as an artist right now to influence the way that I interpreted your pieces as well. So once I did, I continued that free writing process after our Zoom call that day, except it wasn't as fun because it wasn't all of your lovely live voices. It was just me on, there's a great site where you could loop YouTube videos. So I would just like piece by piece sit there with the YouTube video like playing on loop in my headphones, and I just like wrote for a while. Whatever the piece inspired. So that was like one part of the process. And then another part of the process, like I guess while I was doing that, was like journaling and writing from my own life and like reflecting about, because I really do. Nina Simone, she has a really famous quote. I'm gonna butcher it right now, but it's talking about how No, no, it's not Nina Simone, it's Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison talks about like how precisely when the world is in its moments of the most amount of reckoning, that is when artists go to work. That is when we, and particularly as writers, need to like press in and find the words for those difficult moments. So yeah, so the second part of the process was embracing that and taking time to slow down and go, okay, like what is reoccurring right now in, you know, our I guess collective consciousness, right? Because nothing happens in a vacuum. And I think that because all of us have been apart this past year, I think a lot of us are living through the same things and are fighting the same monsters, but it's been a particularly difficult year because we've had to do so under the pretense that we're doing it alone. So that was a thought that hit me, I think maybe like a few weeks into writing, and I had to look at some of the pieces I had. At first it was just going to be all about spring and nature and beautiful things and joy and stuff, but then I went, wait a minute, like in the same way that, you know, with the spring there's a melting away, there's a revealing, there's an exposition, an exposing, right, of what was there before, and that has to be dealt with before we get to the summer months. So that was really my prompt for it was the melding of those two thoughts. So then in doing that, what kept coming up for me was, okay, number one, longing and loneliness and distance. I was thinking about how many people this year have had to like find the words to keep their like love and connection to other people alive, when we couldn't be in like proximity, and being out of sight and out of mind is such an easy thing to become. So that was the inspiration for the first piece. I thought a lot. I thought about the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people and myself that have lost loved ones, and you know, never got to say goodbyes, and all the people that have had to like hold their love alone, you know, hold their love for other people and their dear ones alone through this whole year. So that was the inspiration of the first piece, trying to put to words the, I guess, tenacity of the love that we have for our dear ones, especially when we can't make it to them, you know. And that's why it's called Wild is the Wind, titled after the Nina Simone song of the same name, because I really do believe that love as the thing that binds us all and what we feel for each other. It's a force that is the definition, I think, of wild and powerful and strong. And I really think that's the force that holds this world together. And honestly, love is at the core of my activism as well. I really think that activism, reparations, equity, justice, that is the most radical form of love that exists. That's a commitment. That's a love so deep that you're committed to taking the thing that cut you by the hand and helping it grow. Wow. That is radical love. So that was my inspiration for the first. And then so it was taking those like free writes and free prompts from like that place, and then marrying that text with what came out of me after, like in response to your pieces.
Excited for how our audience will hear what we sing after your words and how that's shaped. Like I shared the first draft of the first one with the ensemble, and I had people in tears, and I think it changed how they sang what will directly precede you and what will come right after you. Like it has been really exciting for us to, as much as we would have loved to be doing this in person and actually collaborating with you in the room, I feel like it's still shaped the performance in a really interesting way, because we're still able to respond to you. And I hope the audience can pick up some of that as well.
Oh, I would love if they do. I think that, like I said, I don't think anything exists in a vacuum, right? And just what is creating, what is collaboration but a conversation, you know, a continuing dialogue. So that's just so exciting. What's the second one? Oh yeah, the second one is called Gianna Floyd, and it was inspired by well, a lot of things. Well, firstly, I was struck by all of my free writes, you know, talking about like what's happening, what's in the zeitgeist, I guess. And what kept coming up was I was sorting through like mourning the loss of innocence as like a young racialized person. A consequence of racism is that it forces young racialized children to stop being children long before they're done growing old, or sorry, young, like well before they're done actually being a kid. And that was inspired. So as this year of activism and education reform was happening, I was of course really passionate about it, but that work, it takes a deep toll. And as I've said, or I guess like alluded to, it's the work that I do by virtue of my being, right? Because I feel like I have to do it. But then there's, I guess, in accepting to take on that labor, there's also juggling and mourning the youth, the innocence, the levity that at moments you leave behind. And not that it's lost forever, but so that's where I was personally. And then very recently, I was watching the Derek Chauvin trial, and I just could not stop thinking about Gianna, who is George Floyd's 9-year-old daughter. And I mean, when I talk about kids not being allowed to be kids, right? That she was basically, and she did it so beautifully, such a brilliant, strong, beautiful little girl, but she had to turn her grief into a stepping stone for our progress at the age of 9 years old. I saw a quote recently that was like, the definition of trauma is too much, too fast, too soon. And I think that, again, in this in this moment of racial reckoning we're in, I fear sometimes because of the way that the media like sensationalizes Black trauma. I fear for our young like Black children and our young Black artists. So that poem was first and foremost what the balm, the words that I needed to hear when I was that little careless Black girl who didn't even know, like I just didn't even understand the size of the world and its systems. All I knew is that they were resulting in making me feel like I needed to be tougher and less soft and flatter, two-dimensional, and all of those things. And so first and foremost, this poem was a letter to that little girl in me that had to stop being a little girl too early. Secondly, it was a letter directly to Gianna Floyd, because it was the only thing that I knew how to do after turning off the news. And then thirdly, it's a letter to, I'm hoping, every young marginalized person ever. I'm hoping that they take away, they will always be more than what the world is taking from them at any given moment. And that just as we fight to protect our lives, we must also protect our youth and our joy and our innocence and our play and our mystery and our silliness and our wonder. Because being in touch with all of those things while living in a society that gives you every reason to only be thinking about your death and demise and destruction, well, that's protest, if you ask me.
Well, and that's not just for children either. I mean, you were talking about being in college and feeling two-dimensional and feeling like what was represented was only accepting parts of you.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's a letter for actually everyone.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Absolutely, it's everyone. I think that, yeah, all of us are so much more than what we're often allowed to be, what we're often given the space to be. So it's a letter for anyone that's ever felt that, I guess. You're totally right. Piece number 3 is another thing I think we've all been grappling with in varying degrees is mental wellness and mental well-being. And I was really, the last number of the show, Protect Your Head, I guess I was thinking about like how that message is about so much more than just like what the actual text of the song is about, but it's also about like the like lump of the organ that's in here, that's between these ears, is like so delicate, and having like depression and anxiety myself, and both of those being like part of my journey before COVID, it was really interesting to watch, like, I think the general public, or like specifically, you know, my family and my friends that hadn't ever struggled with any type of mental health crisis or mental illness in general, but to watch them being affected by the world, and like as a result, you know, feel all of the things that I felt so early in my diagnosis and in my journeys with those two conditions. Like, it was a lot to process. It created a lot of mixed feelings. It at some points made me feel like very validated and seen, and I was like, oh, okay, like this is a lot more people are like waking up to mental wellness as like a priority and an importance. And but then it's the double-edged sword of like also feeling deeply, you know, because it's really sad when you watch, I don't know, like 30-year-olds who have like never had panic attacks before, all of a sudden like can't get out of bed, but because there's so much uncertainty and the world is falling apart. But again, that's because up until now we've lived in a world that has only required those that are most experiencing oppression, are most experiencing affliction, to like be thinking about accommodations and like just accessibility and wellness in the world. But now I think, you know, because a lot of us are, I think a lot more of us through this winter specifically and through this past year really struggled with depression specifically. And so that's what Grey Love is about. It talks about, Grey Love refers to depression and your relationship with that as an entity, and like the fight to, I guess, like keep it, to live with it, because really that's what we do. We just day by day try to figure out how to live with our shadows and live with our problems, and that's what it's about.
So taking all those three into account,
Mm-hmm.
what do you hope the audience takes away from you and from what you've created?
I guess I would say two things. The first thing I would say is that it doesn't so much matter to me that they take away something specific, as much as it matters to me that it makes somebody, number one, feel, and number two, think. As long as this audience and as someone watching my work, if it inspired a thought you've never had, or if it made you feel like what you're living isn't just you, those would be my two goals. Just helping people feel seen, and number two, helping people disrupt their patterns of thinking and viewing and knowing and being.
Thank you so much, Germaine.
Thank you, Jake.